All right, welcome to another episode of Southern Scrap Nation's podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Jonas, and it is April 23rd here in Charlotte, North Carolina. Kind of rainy outside. I would say like low 60s. Um, I'm also your meteorologist for the day. You can find us on Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes, as well as our social media at Southern Scrap Nation, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever it may be. You can follow us there as well as me. So let's get into it. Today's episode is going to be on the post-fight analysis of UFC 128, Kevin Lee, or not UFC Fight Night 128, Atlantic City, Kevin Lee versus Edson Barboza. It was a really good card, surprisingly from start to finish, even though there were some decisions on the card, not necessarily controversy, but stuff to talk about, right? It's good to have a card where as much as there are finishes, because finishes are fun to watch, um, it's also fun to have some sort of, regardless if it goes three decision or to decision or whatever it may be, there's at least something to talk about. There have been some fights where the card has been so long, and this card kind of went on a little long. It was almost, I think, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they should cut down on the fights, and especially if you're on the East Coast doing these. I don't know why we're starting the card at 10 p.m. To me, have been fights where it's been all decisions almost, and nothing's really gone on, and it kind of leaves this week in a state of whatever, and we're waiting till the next card. But luckily, there was some action-packed stuff to happen. But before we get into that, guys, I want to get into some fight announcements and fight news that have happened over the weekend. Cover a little bit of boxing that happened this weekend too. Some notable names won, and just warm our brains up to the whole fight atmosphere for a second. So fight news wise, on a good note, UFC 226 is starting to stack up very well and starting to look really good. You've got recently announced Max Holloway and Brian Ortega fighting on the co-main event. We kind of assumed that was going to happen regardless, but now it's slated. It's happening. 226, for those that don't know, that's the big July card with Stipe Miocic versus Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight championship. So now in the co-main event, you have Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega in the featherweight matchup, or featherweight title matchup. As well in the card, you got Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou announced. So two heavyweight fights on that card already, and the second one is guaranteed to be a barn burner. You had Derek Lewis, and we all like the idea of two knockout guys fighting each other, especially if these guys aren't so keen on wrestling, even though Derek Lewis, his knockouts are more susceptible, or he gets people standing, but it's not like a one-hit clean shot like Francis does. Derek mostly hits them, they fall to the ground, and then his like black beast ground and pound comes into comes to fruition, and then that's even more terrifying. So you got two guys. Derek Lewis made a joke about it on his Twitter, or his Instagram, I guess Twitter too, where it's like each fight or each round will be a minute long, 10 minutes rest in between, and points taken away for each takedown. And I would sign up for that fight, or I'd sign up to watch that any day. So yeah, it's coming out to be a really good card, especially since that's their box office card for the year. That's the Super Bowl card for the year. Knock on wood, everything happens. So other than that, UFC, on the sad news, UFC Chile lost its main event. Santiago Ponzinibbio is out with a thumb injury, currently looking for Kamaru Usman's replacement, or Santiago's replacement, but Kamaru Usman plans on fighting on that card. He said unless it's it has to be a ranked opponent. If not, they'll scrap the main event, I guess. And then I don't know what happens. But yeah, UFC Chile's main event is off. Right now, the UFC site is still selling tickets to it, labeled as Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Kamaru Usman. I think that's a mistake. I think they should change that immediately, especially if they already know that it's out. So before we get into it, let's go into a little bit of boxing. This weekend, Showtime had a card that I'll get into, but earlier on the day, you had the return of Amir Khan. For those that don't remember who Amir Khan is, because he has been out for a minute, he is, I forget what weight class he was. I forget what weight class. This might have been a welterweight fight. One of the fastest hands in boxing. He recently had personal issues, came off of a devastating knockout loss to Canelo Alvarez, and took some time to himself and really regrouped. He came back and knocked a dude out in 30 something seconds. Something ridiculous. A left hook. Maybe it was. I'm getting him, and there's another knockout that I love this weekend, but knocked the dude out clean. I mean, you saw the return of Amir Khan. I mean, obviously 30 seconds is a lot to, or is a short period of time to really know if he gets back. And we all know that the rumor behind, not the rumor, but the takeaway from Amir Khan has always been his glass chin. So it's a lot to take away, or it's a very short amount of time to take away to know if he's back, if he's worked on his defense, if he's worked on these things. But it just seems to it seems that his hands are still there. His speed is still there. He's not a step back on that. So congratulations to Amir Khan on his return fight and that quick victory. Quick paycheck too. So rolling over to the Showtime fights, or Showtime boxing card, you had 3 really big fights. You had Gervonta Davis, for those that don't know, Floyd Mayweather prodigy, won. So now he's a 2-belt division, or a 2-belt holder. Now, I forget who he beat. But once again, congratulations to Gervonta Davis. Landed a body shot, put him down. Then you had Jamal Charlo, the Charlo brothers. He won by knockout. He was the one that got a left hook. He now needs to get up in a little bit more higher level competition, but I'm on the Charlo brother train, future boxing, at them all the time. Like, those guys are awesome. They fight aggressively. They got heavy power. But man, they're quick. The fundamentals are there. It's just fundamentals, aggressiveness. One fight's a little bit more aggressive than the other, but fundamentals pretty much, and that power. For some reason, that middle, they need a little bit more. They need a step up, or Jamal needs a step up in competition. His brother's working his way up, but yeah, he's in that middleweight. So for the future for him, eventually will be like Billy Joe Saunders, Lemieux, Gennady Golovkin, I guess Canelo after he's done with it. By the way, the Canelo Triple G fight is off. I think I've stated this before. Triple G is still fighting May 5th. His coach, Abel Sanchez, put out or I guess the whole team put out a funny, like, promo video for Gennady. And it was just throwing shade at Canelo for eating the tainted meat. Anyway, so Canelo's also suspended due to his drug test failure of clenbuterol, his first test, and then the second test showing higher levels of it. But anyway, I digress. And then in the main event, you had Vargas versus Adrian Broner. Ended up being a decision win, or a split decision. It was a draw. There was no win. It was a draw. My bad. It was a draw. They had words after, so they'll probably make a rematch of it. But I didn't get to watch the fight since I was watching the UFC fights. But I'm gonna look back on it, see what I see. But I mean, it sounds like it. It sounds like it could have been a draw. But they'll run it back. They had words in the ring, so it may be worth a look back on. All right, guys. So, before we get into the post-fight analysis, I want to remind everyone, this podcast is not sponsored or anything like that by anybody, but shout-outs to Charlotte Jiu-Jitsu Academy, John Piper over there, UFC Gym, all the guys over there, as well as, Pete's Coffee getting me through the day. Shout out to Pete's, and cool fight, Roots of Fight shirt, right? Mike Tyson. Just everything. Shout out to my social media marketing person, Madison Nelson. We're working on getting merchandise for you guys. We're working on making some t-shirts, a scrap chat, little play on it with the, Scrap Chat shirt, looking to make a Sips and Slips shirt, and then looking to do just a Southern Scrap shirt, a couple designs. We'll figure it out. But should be good. Should be good. We'll get some T-shirts, probably do a giveaway or something like that. But be on the lookout for that. If you hear that lopping in the background, it's probably my dog drinking water. Sorry about that, guys. So moving on to moving on to what we were going to talk about today, the UFC 128 post-fight analysis of Kevin Lee versus Edson Barboza. So the fight card was, like I said, it was good. There's some to talk about. A couple of fights got scrapped on it, such as Griffin, such as Aspen Ladd versus Leslie Smith, due to weight cutting issues. Leslie Smith actually ended up getting cut from the UFC due to a whole issue of she didn't want to fight. Aspen Ladd wasn't on weight, so the UFC offered her whole win, show, everything. So ended up being like around $60,000 she was offered, or she could have taken a $30,000 for the 20% off Aspen's purse, as well as what her show money and everything. But she decided not to take it and ended up taking the $60,000 in full, and the UFC cut her because that was her last fight on the contract. They'd rather just pay her all her money and then let her leave. So Leslie Smith is now no longer with UFC, and that was weird. It's a weird thing. I guess it was her chance to, show that she would still fight for the organization, but as a fighter, it makes sense. Are you going to take $60,000? She made a good point. She fought Cyborg when no one else is fighting Cyborg. So you can't say that she won't fight anybody, because I don't see, anyone else fighting Cyborg. As soon as she got in there, as soon as she got into the UFC. So for me, I don't blame her. Take the $60-something thousand, but for the UFC just to cut her for it, that's kind of ridiculous. And especially in the women's division, there's not a lot of girls. I just saw an article that said after Leslie Smith was cut, that leaves the UFC bantamweight division with only 19 females. That means there's a top 19. That's not a lot of girls. There's the top 20 in the lightweight division are all killers, so that means there's a bunch of other dudes in the lightweight division that aren't even there. So I think it was a bad call on the UFC's part. They could use all the female fighters that they have. For Leslie Smith, I don't know what that means for her, since Invicta is owned by the UFC. I guess she could go fight in Ryzen or something. There's other organizations, obviously, but Bellator, maybe. That'd be a good place for Leslie. Bellator? Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Huh. But I think it was a mistake. There was no reason for that. So, a little bit of the other controversies. Not really controversies, but things to talk about during the fight. And then, this will lead into the main event breakdown of... By the way, got everyone but two right, and we'll talk about it. Just to let you all know. I know my stuff. All right, so some of the stuff on the prelims that I saw that caught my eye. The first thing was Bada Hazari. Badazarda. Sorry if I botched that name up. He's a welterweight. He's fought in the UFC. I've seen a couple of his fights back in the day. Not back in the day, make it sound like super long ago. But like 2 years ago or so, before the Reebok deal, I can put a timestamp on that. And then he took some time off, I guess, and now he came back. And this finish was ridiculous. First off, let me preface this. Imagine a bald dude with a dad bod, some bicep muscle, but not like the most athletic-looking guy in the world. And I'm not taking away from his fighting ability. I just want to preface this with one guy looks like that, and then the other guy's just, juice to the gills, big tattoos, welterweight. obviously welterweight, you have a plethora of looking guys. You have a Tim Means, long, lanky, all the way to Tyron Woodley, who looks like a superhero. You know, you have extremes on both sides. However, you had extremes in both sides of this fight, but man, does technique, does power, I guess, I'm assuming it's technique. Does that an experience? Does that grant you so much? So, Bada Hazarda, um, his finish was like in a video game, right? You land something cool, or at least in the UFC video game, you land something cool, and on the way down, you hit something. You hit something with them. It's like accurately. You're like, wow, that was pretty cool. You hit him with an unintentional shot on the way down. Anyway, his was totally intentional. He rear snap kicked into the sternum of his opponent, who I'm blanking on the name right now. And with that kick, had him crumble, start falling forward. And as he was falling forward, in time before he hit the mat, he clipped him with an uppercut, which flatlined him, knocked him out before the guy even hit the mat. One, that's finishing instinct to another level, but two, it was great. It was a precise uppercut. It hit right on the area that you needed it to. You could have totally missed and then landed some ground and pound shots. Either way, the fight was over regardless. It was just super clean, right? If you wanted to get someone out there or out of there with a body shot, more often than not, you're going to have to go in there, maybe land a couple shots, or leave yourself open to getting hit if you rush too far forward. He rushed, clipped him with an uppercut, and walked away. Clean knockout, good on him. Someone to watch out for, not necessarily because he's a prospect or he's a young up and comer. It's just more watch out because he's back, right? He's back. He can cause a little bit of problems for some people, who thought they could just waltz through the welterweight division. And then the other thing that happened during the prelims was, I'm gonna botch this name up too. Come on, guys. Dalvalsfili. He's a Matt Serra Ray Longo guy, Georgian, high pressure. Fought Ricky Simone, and man, what a fight! So, does Feely put the pressure on this guy? Constant forward movement, constant. Excuse me, constant pressure. Not left himself open, but there were moments where he was putting enough pressure on where he could have just kept doing what he was doing, but he wanted to just keep the action going. He could have easily just taken him down, held him down. Not necessarily in the second or third round, but in the first round he was doing so much good work that he could have just kept on doing that. But instead he wanted to make it a fight, which I'll take it, fight of the night, because it was. But in the last seconds, he goes for a takedown where Ricky Simone grabs his head for a guillotine, gets slammed. In the slam, Philly knocks himself out, comes to as Ricky's choking him. Ricky flips him over to full mount, gets a head and arm, or an arm in, just I think a regular guillotine, starts pulling back. It was a head and arm guillotine. He had that for a minute. Feely's sitting there, arms flailing, bicycle kicking his legs back and forth to make sure that he's keeping the blood flowing. He's keeping he's keeping himself in, trying to fight, making sure that he's moving so the ref can see it. He's going in and out, probably out. Anyway, the fight ends. The ref calls it as the buzzer goes off. They replay it because New Jersey hasn't adopted the new rules, but they have a replay. Instant replay, but once that's in effect, the fight's over. So as the fight was over, they put the replay in effect, and then it showed that he was out. The fight was declared a TKO in Ricky Simone's favor. I don't know, a technical submission, I guess, since he didn't tap. I don't know. Or ref stoppage. He was out. As he was off, as Ricky got off the choke, the bell went. You can see Des Fili's a little out, and then he gets to. He's like, "No, I'm good. I'm here. I'm here." And then he like lays down there for a second. So he's totally out. It's justifiable. I don't know why it's a TKO. It doesn't make any sense to me. TKO is technical knockout. There's no technical knockout here. I guess you could do technical submission, but that's T sub. I don't know. So for me, yeah, I mean, it made sense. The the finish, definitely, yes. Give Ricky Simone the finish because he was out. He technically was out. It just, you know, they did instant replay to prove it. But, man, what a fight regardless. What a fight regardless. So we'll go ahead and, that being said, watch out for Des Fili in the future. Ricky Simone also one to look out for. But, you know, if you want entertaining fights, that's the guy that's going to have the name on it. So moving into the main card, you had Dan Hooker versus Jim Miller. Now, I was saying that Jim Miller has a chance to win this fight with his veteran expertise, but I think that fight that Dan Hooker had against Ross Pearson helped him out a lot because you had two guys kind of the same size getting knocked out the same way with that rear right kick, and you can see Dan Hooker set that knee up the whole entire first. I mean, it was a knockout in the first round. So let me back up. Dan Hooker wins by knockout in first round due to rear knee. You can see him setting it up the whole entire time. He was getting Jim to lean to the left. He was getting him to really invest in that and jab, knee right up, knocked him out. And, I mean, what can you say about Dan Hooker? He's really found his... And Jim was finding some success in the very, very beginning, but it was due to Dan trying to set it up. Dan's a master at setups. He trains at Tiger Muay Thai, went through their whole fight camp. A lot of people don't realize this. He went through tryouts. He could have easily just walked on because he's an MMA, UFC fighter, but he went through tryouts to make the team, then made the team, obviously, and trains with Tiger Muay Thai as well as Israel Adesanya in New Zealand and a lot of those high-level guys over there. In the striking department. So watch out for Dan Hooker in the 155 division. He's really rocking that. He's rocking his frame well for it. He's tall, lanky. Now that he doesn't have to cut down to 145, can put a little bit more muscle on. And that's where you're seeing a lot of these knockouts due to the speed, accuracy, and just overall fight IQ of this up-and-comer. So moving on to Aljamain Sterling defeating Brett the Pikey Johns. So this fight was... Once again, this is the one that I called for Brett Johns winning because I was on the Brett Johns hype train. However, he lost. Not in a bad way. It's just a learning experience for Brett Johns. This was high-level competition for him. The highest level he's gotten in the UFC so far, which was Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling coming off that knockout loss to Marlon Moraes. So what I was looking for was Aljamain Sterling's chin to be a little bit compromised after that fight, but nope, he was totally fine. He used his range very, very well. He took him down when he needed to and really dominated the fight on the ground. Brett Johns has a very good top game, but doesn't have a very good bottom game. He went for judo throws in press situations, so really going back to his bread and butter, but a good wrestler is going to nullify those moves by just dropping their level, which Aljamain did. When I mean drop their level, go for a takedown. Doesn't allow a judoka to get their hips in for a throw or a trip or anything like that. So, that being said, he just did exactly what he needed to do. Aljamain's always been criticized of having not necessarily boring fights, kind of boring fights, but more where he used a lot of kicking and keeping people at bay and then going for takedowns, so not really showing his overall game. This one, he allowed his hands to fly, he allowed his kicks to fly, he allowed his takedowns to go. So it made for an interesting fight. At the very end, he called out Dominic Cruz for a fight. This is when your idols become your rivals. Very good quote. Not his quote, but just, that's a good point. Because it totally makes sense, right? It totally makes sense for him to fight Dominic Cruz, or because Jimmy Rivera's booked with Marlon Moraes. You have Cody Garbrandt fighting TJ Dillashaw. And if Dominic Cruz wants to cement himself as still that number 2, number 3 person in the bantamweight division, why not take an Aljamain Sterling out? Do it with ease if you think so. But It's going to be a tough fight. Brett Johns on his side, he just has a little bit of work to do. That's about it. I mean, he just showed that he needs to round out his game. He got away with a lot that he was doing before, but now it's up to him to go for a little bit more submissions off his back. Right? Can't just lay where he is. He's got to work to get to the feet, not just by using the cage. Um, Maybe throw in a little bit more kicks, not be so boxing heavy, because the boxing heavy, unless you have very good takedown defense or very good submissions off your back, can be a detriment. You go heavy on that lead foot, especially with a kicker, can kick the leg out, or with a wrestler, you overshoot that jab or that uppercut or hook, and you're gonna get taken down. A good wrestler such as Aljamain Sterling, or an even better, you know, transitionist such as Dominic Cruz, who's able to go from takedown to striking, is going to give a guy like Brett Johns a lot of problems. The only critique that I would have for Aljamain Sterling, which isn't like a bad technique or critique, it was just in the moment, it made me think. So like an analysis of that moment. He had Brett Johns hurt at one point and started flurrying on Brett Johns, right? He started uppercut side or hooks, trying to, you know, I forget what it's called, tornado punching, where you go uppercut or hook down. You kind of just make that bop, bop. You're volleying them up and down, kind of. That works. However, Aljamain did it straight on. If you're trying to knock someone out, you can't hit them straight on. I mean, you can try to aim for the chin and knock them out straight on, or try to bust them in the nose or something. But the easier way to knock someone out, you have to get to the side. And from there, once you can see the inside of someone's ear, that means you have the knockout shot. That's how you know when you can knock someone out, is when you can look right into their eardrum. And once you can look right into their ear, that's where the knockout shots come from. You have to take angles. And Aljamain was in the position to just bum rush him to the side, but instead he got in front of him to start throwing the flurry. If he just took that flurry and cut it a couple angles, you may have had a knocked out Brett Johns, right? Because all the shots Brett Johns was covering with his face, right? He can come and bring his hands to the side. He can really shell up in the front. But if you come to the side, I can't really shell up from here. I can put my hand here, but come from the side, I'm going to take shots to the face. I'm going to take shots coming up from the bottom. So it's very hard to defend from the side. It's even harder to defend from the back. So that, and you can't attack from the back, obviously. You can't punch someone in the back of the head. So get your next best option, and that's attack from the side. They can't see you. You can see them. You can see where the openings are. If you attack them straight on, as much as you are covering yourself and you can't really see, you can at least gauge where they are. You can reach out. You can try to grab on. You give them a chance. All right. That's my rant on fix the flurry, and then you can get the knockout. But it was good. It was a good performance by Aljamain, exactly what he needed. And I think Dominic Cruz might not take the fight, but it was good enough it was a good performance enough for me to agree with Aljamain. That's the fight to make. Moving on to a quick one. We had David Branch versus Thiago Santos. Man, I was hoping Thiago was going to win this one because he was on this his fight win streak, but I have some stuff to critique about. He was doing very well. David Branch was even doing better. He was taking a very Yoel Romero approach, and I liked it. He was being very patient with this guy. Thiago Santos has a very offensive game, so you have to let him wear himself out. You have to let him get those big shots out of the way. And what I mean by that is let him throw those big shots, get those things out of the way that he's trying to end in the first round. Everyone wants a knockout win in the first round. Thiago's definitely one of those guys that tries to go for it. So let him get those big shots out of the way. Not saying he's not dangerous after the second or after the first round, but he's going to throw with more percentage those bigger fight-ending shots. And David Branch did well. He was patient, took what he needed to, defended what he needed to, and then he did what he had to. He backed Thiago up, and this is where Thiago's own skills set up his demise. Thiago's, it's very reminiscent of the Luke Rockhold Yoel Romero fight. David Branch in this scenario was Yoel Romero. Thiago Santos in this scenario was Luke Rockhold. David Branch found his opening, backed Thiago up. Thiago went backwards straight. As soon as he knew he hit the cage, shit, it's too late to go laterally. So he starts to lateral. He starts to pick a side laterally. He picks the left side, or he picks the right side at the moment where David Branch's lead hand was. So he's like, "That's not. I'll take the left side because it's not the power side." However, it was because David Branch's right hand was out, so it seemed like it wasn't the power side. As he turned that corner, Thiago kept his chin up, leading to David Branch getting that right hand over the top, dropping him, following up with the subsequent knockout shots. However, Thiago's linear path of backing up straight into the octagon is what fucked him in that fight. And then obviously leaving his chin up. If he tucked his chin, kept his hands up, and then maybe it would have not got him knocked out in the first round, but eventually that style is going to get you knocked out. You can take 2 steps, you can take 3 steps back, depending on how big you are, but before you even hit the cage, lateral. You can't lateral as soon as your back hits the cage. Once you do, your head has nowhere to go, right? If you're the taller fighter, in this case, you get away with pulling your head back. You get away with doing that weave, that oh shit movement, right? As soon as the cage is there, this chair being a good example, I can't do that back weave anymore. Straight punches, hooks from wide hooks are going to catch me. My chin is straight up in the air. Head is back and blocked. I can't go any further back. Now, if I take 2 steps and there's open field, I can lean further back if I need to. I can, lean at a certain angle if I need to. And there's nothing restricting my head from going further back if I needed to. Straight punches I can get away with leaning back after. But as soon as you step back against the fence, you can't lean back anymore. You got to figure out another way to circle out. You got to circle out, head high or chin tucked, arms ready for a takedown, anything. But that being said, you can't do that. So what did David Branch do that was so well? He did the Yoel Romero approach. He was patient. He waited for his moment, then he flurried forward. He used his boxing to get inside, cut the kicking range off by getting him against the cage. And then once he was against the cage, unloading. Doing what he did to Luke Rockhold, except this time actually landing clean while the guy was in transition. Did what he needed to, and then really solidified where he belongs in the middleweight division. He's better than Thiago Alves. Maybe not Luke Rockhold's level. Needs a little bit of work there. But he's in that top 5, guys. David Branch is there. A World Series of Fighting guy that showed that he can get some wins, get some losses in the UFC. Very Marlon Moraes of him. Highlight win. Couple loss, right? To higher level opponents. And he showed where he belongs. Thankfully, it wasn't the Yoel fight, because then you probably would have seen David Branch 0-2 in the UFC, but now you got 1-2 in the UFC. So now you got David Branch as, oh shit, middleweight's got something again. Oh, thank God. Either way, if one of those guys won, you would have been happy. But at least this way, David Branch has common opponents in the past, such as Luke Rockhold, that when you move forward with him, you can be like, oh, he did this against Luke Rockhold well. I wonder how he'd do against Chris Weidman or Kevin Gastelum, Jacare, maybe even book a David Branch versus Derek Brunson fight. We saw what he can do. All right. So following that fight, we had the Justin Willis versus Chase Sherman fight. To be honest with you guys, I watched a little bit of this. This is the moment of I was trying to get food or something. I didn't really see it. Maybe in the bathroom or something, but 15 minutes, it wasn't in the bathroom. I don't know. I wasn't around the TV as this fight was going on, right? I think I was probably getting food. So Justin Willis, from what I saw bits and pieces of it, saw kind of the third round, a little bit of the second round. Justin Willis, man, he just did what I thought he was going to do. He used that left hand, being a southpaw as a heavyweight. used his athleticism to keep Chase Sherman on the back foot and then just wore him out. Good win by Justin Willis. Like I said, prospect in the future, aka heavyweight. Man, he trains with the likes of Kane and DC, a former defensive back, right? Yeah, defensive back in college. He's someone to look forward to in the heavyweight division when you're looking for, prospects for the future. Wish it was a light heavyweight, because light heavyweight could use all the prospects that they could use all the prospects in the world right now, but got what you got in the heavyweight division. So going on to the co-main event, Cub Swanson versus Frankie Edgar. Not much to take away from this fight, guys. The best way to put this, Frankie Edgar's win of this just shows that it's same but different. Frankie Edgar won a stand-up battle with Cub Swanson. He showed that his chin holds up. I mean, he did very well defensively, obviously, because moving. That Brian Ortega shot was literally a shot he didn't see coming. More susceptible to get knocked out to those. You can see that by a taller guy. He got hit with an elbow instead of a jab. I empathize with Frankie Edgar, and I understand Frankie Edgar when he says I got hit with a shot that I didn't see coming. Frankie Edgar, if you look at all the fighters he's fought in the past in that division, and a lot of the fighters that he's lost to are taller fighters, and the reason being is because all the other fighters that he's fought, Jose Aldo, Chad Mendez, BJ Penn, those 3 times, Ray Maynard, all these guys are kind of the same size as him, Cub Swanson. So that reach, like those little tricks that guys have with the reach in the reach department, he doesn't really see them. So when Brian Ortega hit him with that lead elbow, it was really a shot he didn't see coming, because it's not something he's ever really had to prepare for or has dealt with. So this fight, even though Frankie Edgar won, I will give tremendous props to Cub Swanson. The winner in this fight to me is Cub Swanson. He showed his game has changed. I don't know if it's because of the child he had, or if he's whatever it may be, that loss to Brian Ortega, whatever it may be. Frankie Edgar went for 8 takedowns, and he landed 0 takedowns. Frankie Edgar landed 0 takedowns on Cub Swanson, a guy that he dominated in the wrestling department last time. Frankie Edgar, obviously winner, and someone to, it's Frankie Edgar. It's Frankie goddamn Edgar, the answer. I mean, obviously he won. I mean, how can you not root for a guy that doesn't win? Or doesn't lose? He's the underdog. He's always the underdog. I mean, he loses, obviously, but, he's the underdog. He always is. Always the undersized guy. Every time he loses, Frankie Edgar, is he going to go to 135? Is he going to drop down? Is he going to... we're always worried about him. We're always worried that he's going against too big of giants. We're always worried that this is too much for him. But he's proven time and time again, he's a giant killer. He's Frankie Edgar. He's the guy, the 155-pound champion at one point in time, And anyway, so Frankie won a stand-up battle with Cub Swanson, showed his boxing movement, or his boxing that we know he has, and just, won it that way. Won it regardless if he gets to take that or not. He's a mixed martial artist. He can fight it anywhere. Doesn't matter. Cub Swanson, though, improvements since that first fight. Improvements. So, yeah. And moving on to the main event. So, the big breakdown from this. Kevin Lee versus Edson Barboza. A lot of people, man. A lot of people were voting on Kevin Lee because of the wrestling thing. But to me, is the Khabib PTSD thing a real thing? We've seen it with the Michael Johnson thing. As soon as Michael Johnson got put to the ground after his loss to Khabib against Darren Elkins, it's just like he gave up. Same thing with Edson Barboza. Is it the PTS thing, or or have these guys been exposed to the fact that they don't have a bottom game? And what I mean by that is, when you get a guy like Tony Ferguson, where you can take him down, and maybe you can take him down at will. Maybe your wrestling is better than his, and you can take him down at will. Or even Aljamain Sterling against Marlon Moraes is a very good example. Some of these guys, when they get put on their back, the first thing that happens is they start throwing up submissions. Right? They don't worry about standing back up. They just worry about trying to get you into a submission. They worry about submitting you, worrying about attacking you from the bottom. Now, what does that do? As much as it seems futile because you're being put on your back and you have a guy on top beating, like punching you in the face, and it seems kind of like counterintuitive to start punching him back because you don't feel like you have the leverage. I'm not advocating for anyone to punch back while they're on their back, but guys like Tony Ferguson, when you have him in the guard, he elbows or he attacks from weird angles. He does like shots to the ear, just little things to annoy you. Those things aren't necessarily meant to do damage. They do damage. Those elbows for sure do damage, but they're more to create space. They allow you to put your foot on your opponent's hips. They allow you to push them away, create a little space, maybe to get your knee inside, maybe develop some frame. Stop the punishment from happening. As soon as I commit to just trying to stand up and wall walking or moving to the cage to wall walk, that's my game. They know that's my game. And guess what? A guy like Khabib that knows how to wrist ride, a guy like Kevin Lee that knows how to wrist ride and climb that ladder to get to mount is just going to pull you down, beat you up, let you back up, pull you down, beat you up, let you back up. People that wrestle don't like to engage on the ground if the person on the ground is dangerous. If the person on the ground, his only move is to stand up, okay, well, I'll let you stand up, but I'm going to just take you down again. And that's what we saw in this fight. Kevin Lee took Khabib's game plan and then just used it against Edson, relying on the fact that Edson doesn't have any ground submission skills to that level. Just let him stand up. I'm going to get you back down anyways. Why the fuck do I care if you stand back up? And he would just pick him up. The way that he did it was more violent than Khabib. Khabib's very good. And the fact that Kevin Lee did this for 5 rounds was mind-boggling to me. And also we'll talk about it because everyone wants to hear, everyone wants to talk about it, everyone saw it, everyone wanted to see it. Kevin Lee got hit by the wheel kick and did the fucking chicken dance in the middle of the octagon. I don't care what anyone says. To recover from that isn't... You can talk about Edson Barboza's wheel kicks all day. Yeah, obviously. You knocked out Terry Edom with the first ever one ever. Yeah, awesome. Congratulations. Obviously, it's a very devastating kick, set up right. It can make you do the fucking chicken dance in the middle of the cage. Nothing wrong with that. As much as Kevin Lee wanted to practice the stanky leg, the recovery is what's more impressive. The moment where TJ Dillashaw got hit with the Cody Garbrandt uppercut, and all Cody can harp on now is, yeah, I had you wobbling back to the stool in the first round. TJ's like, I don't care. I knocked you out in the second round. You didn't recover at all. I recovered. And I'll repeat this on this program till this program stops being a program, or until I get tired of this bullshit. You can't condition your chin. You can do chin exercises, I guess. You can buy that ball that's on Facebook now where it looks like you're just ball gagging yourself, and develop that jawline. I don't know how much bro science is in that one. But what you can condition is how to recover from that. If you are well conditioned, which we saw Kevin Lee being able to do what he did for 5 rounds, if you end up having to do with a stanky leg or the jerk or whatever your opponent makes you do in the middle of the octagon after a big hit, if you can bring your faculties back together due to your conditioning, your ability to breathe, the ability to be in that moment, real championship mentality kind of. We saw it with Tony Ferguson getting head kicked by Lando Venata. Drops to the ground, comes back up like a slinky. Bro, I've never seen someone... I've definitely seen people slinky like that, but up and down like an accordion, and then goes to finish the fight. Same kind of idea, right? That patience, that ability to just continue doing what you're doing, even through the highest level of adversity. Hey, people on your computers right now, you're your due date for this week or whatever that your boss has going, yeah, it's adversity, I guess. But getting wheel kicked in front of your friends and family while having to keep it together like a fucking savage, that's adversity. I don't want to hear about, oh, my pen broke. I don't want to hear about, the internet's slow. Those are not adversity. Adversity is what Kevin Lee dealt with, and then being able to then go back to his violent rampage of slam, elbows, top position. Listen, what Khabib did against Edson is no walk in the park, and it's not easy for anybody to do. A lot of guys have tried and failed. Beneil Dariush tried and failed. There's a lot of guys that went in for those takedowns and went in for those shots and really paid for it. However, when Khabib did what he did and showed that Edson Barboza doesn't have any option other than getting up from the fence, and then, I mean, after the first, second round, once that explosive hips hit the ground, back up, kind of, power, or like that, once that's drained from getting taken down so many times and getting taken down against the fence, it doesn't allow you just to pop back up. Once you start getting tired of that, it just becomes a wall walking game. And once Khabib showed that Edson only has wall walks to get back up, man, Kevin Lee was like, I'm going to do it better than him. And he did. He followed through on it. He stopped Edson Barboza in the 5th round due to doctor stoppage. Those elbows cut up above the eyelid. Water comes inside, or blood goes into the eye. Doctor calls it off. So cuts, for those that don't know, cuts right here, unless it's like really bad, unless it's like bad, cuts below the eye, no big deal. That's not what's going to stop a fight. Cuts above the eye are what's going to stop a fight more likely. Reason why? If it gets into the eye, they can't see. It's like getting eye poked really, really bad. If you physically can't see, there's no point in you taking more damage from not being able to see. So yeah, Edson Barboza, he got, for him, the takeaway is you can't just wall walk. You can't just Keith Jardine your way through your career anymore. You have to develop ways to get up in the center of the octagon. Next $1 million idea? Not really next $1 million idea. But if you want to work on something now more than ever in the UFC or in MMA in general, learn how to get the fuck up in the middle of the octagon. If you can get up in the middle of the octagon, you can use a cage to fucking help you out too. But just having the knowledge that you can get up in the middle of the octagon, to the slight right of the octagon, to the slight left of the octagon against the cage, is going to just give you confidence that no matter where someone takes you down, they're not going to be able to hold you down. But the idea of, I can get Edson Barboza down, but he's a tough nut to hold down, except in the middle of the octagon, that's like being confident in my cooking skills, except for baking. Like, I'm not really good at baking. And this is me being dead ass serious. Like, I'm confident in my cooking skills, but I can't say I'm a chef. I can't say that I'm an all-around cook, because I don't know how to fucking bake. I mean, I probably could take some time, learn how to bake, whatever. But I can't be like, I'm a fucking chef, because I don't have all the tools. I don't have everything. Same thing in MMA. You can say you're an MMA fighter, but you can't say that you're a high echelon level MMA fighter on the same level as Tony Ferguson, Khabib, or Conor, because I've never gotten up in the middle of the octagon. I've never gotten up in bad situations in other areas. Once you round out, you have to be able to get up everywhere. You have to be able to knock out anyone from anywhere. You have to be able to do everything anywhere. You can't have, it's almost an extreme. You can't have faults in your game, right? If I don't have kickboxing in 2018 in MMA, I'm probably not going to succeed as well. I'm probably not going to get to that level. If I can't strike against the cage, if I can't defend takedowns against the cage, it's a huge hole in my game. And like I said, Khabib exposed that hole in Edson. He exposed that hole in Michael Johnson. He exposed that hole in a lot of guys. That's what he does. Um, and in this fight, all I can say is Kevin Lee exposed it, or he just took advantage of the. And I'm sure he saw it before he got into the fight, or saw it before he had that fight with Edson even scheduled. But he just did Khabib's game plan, but better. And I think that win actually shows a little bit more that Khabib is human. It shows more and more every fight that you see. Khabib's a little bit more and more human. The more guys he fights, the more guys you realize, oh, he's not this legend everyone talks about. Because if he was, as much as he had 3 rounds with Edson Barboza for what Kevin did in the 5 rounds, Kevin did what Khabib did, but more violently. Sorry. Eddie Alvarez is not a good matchup for Khabib. Right? There's a lot of guys that are starting to go. There's a lot of guys in these divisions that are starting to look like bad matchups for Khabib. Before it was like, who could beat this guy? Now it's like, I can give you a couple names that could beat him. We'll just have to see. So that's not necessarily to take anything away from Khabib. It's just people are human. And if you don't go in there with the mentality that they're human, you're most likely going to lose. You can't look at someone like they're a legend or some unbeatable creature. That's where you get beaten before you even get in there, right? Basic sports psychology on that. But when you look at a guy like Khabib, who's 26-0, and you only hear these stories about him in the training room, it's hard not to be like, oh shit, like maybe he is this legend. But in this case, when you start watching other fighters fight the same guys he's fought, or he starts fighting, spotlight guys that he's being able to, actually, he's on the bigger stage, he's starting to fight a little bit more. His game's is being spotlighted a lot more. Before he didn't fight as much, so you couldn't see much of his game. He'd come in, do his work, and you'd be like, oh shit, and then you forget about him, come in, do his work again. Now he's fighting a lot more. Now you're starting to see that he's got holes places. So that 3-man tournament that's at the top of the lightweight division becomes more and more interesting day by day. Now, what we're all forgetting from this is Tony Ferguson submitted Edson Barboza in the 2nd round of a 3-round fight after still beating him a little bit on the feet. He beat Kevin Lee with a submission off his back after being taken down in the 1st round, getting ground and pounded on, after people thought he was being dominated. Won by submission. I'm telling y'all, Tony Ferguson is a different animal in this division. He's just different. Khabib's a different animal. That top 3, you say what you want about Conor. I mean, he's striking-wise is a different animal, for sure. At work ethic, different animal as well. But until he gets back in the octagon and starts fighting, I ain't saying shit. He's not a UFC fighter. He's not fighting to me. I don't know what he's doing. Throwing dollies at... Anyway. If he wants to fight someone, he can just fight them. That's his job. It's his job, folks. That's like me crashing my car and going to a mechanic and being a mechanic myself. No, that's not a terrible example. That's like trying to play basketball on the court, doing all these 1-on-1 games or 3-on-3 games, and just being like, I'm so ready to play in the pros again. And it's like, bro, you're in the pros. Why are you doing these? Like, why are you doing these, like, pickup games? Like, we have practice. Like, get to practice. No, man. Like, just you wait till I'm back. Bro, you're back. Just get in there. Get in there, right? So, what does that say about the lightweight division? Shit, you got Poirier, Lee, Khabib, Tony. Eddie Alvarez is in there. You got Conor. Lightweight division has always been the most stacked division, but even now more than ever, who's next for a title shot? How do I want to play this out? Let's see, Eddie Alvarez is number 3. You have the 3 champs at the top. Depending on what happens to Conor, Khabib doesn't want to come back till December, November, because Ramadan and stuff. Um, so December, November, Khabib's coming back. Tony's gone for at least 6 to 9 months. So he's completely out. Khabib's kind of out. If you could do an interim shot, depending on what happens with Conor, do something with Conor McGregor. But those other two are keys in that. What I'm starting to see is you need Eddie Alvarez against Dustin Poirier for the second time, or you need Kevin Lee against Dustin Poirier, or Kevin Lee versus Eddie Alvarez. Let those three decide who the next number one contender is, and then it's like a 6-man tournament, right? I don't know. And then you got Ally Quinta in there, who needs somebody. I don't know, man. I guess those three can fight it out, and then Eddie Alvarez, Dustin Poirier, Kevin Lee. The winner of that fights the winner of whoever wins out of the three up there. I don't know. No one's coming back in time for me to be like, yeah, let's do it. Fuck, man. I don't know. All right, guys. Well, that's all I have for you on the breakdowns for today. I'll be back on Wednesday for you guys with another episode of Sips and Slips. We won't be breaking down any fights because the next fight isn't until, or the next card isn't until May 12th. We headed back to Brazil with the women's bantamweight division championship on the line. Amanda Nunes versus Raquel Pennington, as well as Kevin Gastelum versus Jacare and Vitor Belfort in his last fight against Lyoto the Dragon Machida. They're going back to Rio, baby. UFC 224. All right. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll go into whatever news comes out this week. We'll just break down some more stuff. I'm probably just going to get on my soapbox, man. I'm just going to start doing soapbox shit. Start ranting to you guys. I can't do one of these without doing it for an hour anyways. It's like therapy. All right. So other than that, guys, I hope you all have a good rest of your Monday, Tuesday. I'll be back Wednesday for y'all. Other than that, you can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, Southern Scrap Nation. And then also listen to us, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play, or available there. Check out my YouTube channel so you can see this pretty face, as well as just, put a face to a name, voice. I don't know. More I can do with video. That's pretty cool. Takes a little bit easier, and y'all can see my puppy. Look at Griffin. There's your Griffin. Yeah, look at him. Camera shy. All right, guys. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and make sure to, like I said, check us out, and we'll be back for another episode of Sips and Slips on Wednesday. Thanks, guys.